I can say, as I say to some people who don't have a testimony, I can say that acquiring a testimony for me wasn't really what I would say easy. When we moved here to Roy from Idaho Falls in 1967, about that time, I was starting to begin to wonder about things like daddy-daughter date that they have in church, and they have different activities for dads and kids getting different blessings. And I think that what I'm saying is I became to see more clearly the responsibilities of being a dad. I don't think I was a bad dad, but I don't think I was ever a particularly really good one. That's a hard subject for me to talk about. But I will say that I decided I was going to learn more about the gospel and to find out if it really was true. It wasn't that I didn't believe in it, being around church people all my life, but I was just always kind of on the fence, kind of a doubting Thomas and not thinking much about church. But I decided about that time, or maybe even before, but particularly at that time, that I was going to try to learn more about the church, and if possible, get a testimony. I remember going to Salt Lake every time I could, because to the church center there, because I hadn't been there very much. We were living in Idaho Falls for 12, 14 years or so. We didn't get to Salt Lake very much. Anyway, to make a long story short, I did go down there quite a few times on my own and just walked around the grounds, and I looked at the temple, and I remembered as I looked at the temple that my grandfather used to run around on the foundation of that temple. Anyway, little things gradually got me a little more interested in knowing about the church. I remember when I'd come home from Salt Lake, a lot of times I'd go for a book called, it was something by B.H. Roberts, the six church books that B.H. Roberts wrote about the gospel.
The whole set of books.
Well, okay, 6 or 7, and I think it was just 6, it doesn't matter. I remember reading and very interested, and I can remember many nights when I'd come home, or many weekends after being down at the temple, or down to the temple site and everything, coming home and getting those books. And I remember reading all 6 of them, and I think that got me started in thinking more about the gospel and giving me definitely a stronger testimony. I attended church quite regularly, started attending church regularly.
When did you start attending church?
Regularly.
How old were your kids?
Regularly around that period. It seems that when we moved here, I was going quite frequently. And I was going to Idaho Falls too, but I think I was more on the fence there than I was after a while here. I don't know if that's right. I haven't thought that through much. But I do know that I did a lot of praying, and I did follow the instructions I was supposed to, that I knew that I had to do in order to gain a testimony. I know that I started paying tithing, and gladly paying tithing, not with a grudge. That was not an easy step. And fast offerings. I remember one time sitting in church. I remember exactly where I was sitting. and I was trying really hard to get a testimony. I can't say I didn't have a testimony. I think I should say trying to get a short testimony, if there is such a thing as a short testimony, rather than kind of an on the fence, well, probably so testimony. And I remember right where I was sitting, where I just got the strongest feeling that it was true. I don't know how to express it, other than the fact that I was kind of paralyzed there for a few seconds. And then I had other times later in life working at the temple where I felt very spiritual, and I guess maybe I'm not getting this together exactly right, but that Norrin Ashley, she wanted it, and I didn't get time. Anyway, I worked in the temple 3 years with Althea, and I worked 7 years without her. And I got some very spiritual experiences in the temple. So I think, to make a long story short, observing what the church was doing, the church grounds, learning about the church, lots of prayer. I gradually got a testimony, and I feel today that I have a very strong testimony. I feel I have a really, truly, very strong testimony, and I don't think anything could shake me loose from the way I feel about the church. I mean, I think that I remember in Idaho Falls, although I was going to church there, but I remember several things that a stake president said, and a couple things that happened that kind of turned me off on the church, about the church. But I've learned that even people in high up positions sometimes maybe make mistakes, or you feel that they do anyway. All the people I've known who are in church positions, high church positions, as far as I'm concerned, are great people. Like I say, I've had one or two that.
Well, what did you done?
I don't know why.
Why was he mad at you?
What?
Why was he mad at you?
The stake president in Idaho Falls was mad at
why?
me because I would not take a church job because of somebody, and I can't remember who it was. I just couldn't work with that person. And he says, we are going to go right to so-and-so because of not taking this job, and I just still couldn't take it. So I'm mixing up a whole lot, Ashley, that doesn't make too much sense, I guess. I would say that was a hard time in my life. It was a joyous time, getting a testimony, and not that I didn't have a testimony, but getting a stronger testimony was not hard, but it was, I don't know how to express it. I wouldn't call it so much hard as time. It took a lot of time.
I think you started to show.
It took.
Show the testimony, Mel.
What?
I think you started to show strength in your testimony when you were going with Bishop Zinfini on that stake mission. And you went.
Well, that and other things, and even before.
You'd go every week to different people's houses.
And who's the guy in Idaho Falls?
To strengthen your testimony.
Who's the guy in Idaho Falls that chased me around, took me fishing? You know who he is. We saw him in Salt Lake once.
Oh, that was he was after you every Sunday to come to priesthood meeting, and you just would not go.
I remember going to a lot of priesthood meetings out here. It's hard to put all this together, but I would say that one of the greatest things I ever did or ever could do was to gain a testimony, because it gave me so much more peace in my mind and being a better person, maybe a better person,
goals.
And it made life itself, the frustrations of making a living, which was always quite frustrating to me because I couldn't make enough money. The family took a lot of money, and as a teacher, I wasn't making much. Seems like I was always working extra jobs, which I didn't mind doing. But it seems like there was
Well, hard to do.
an element of frustration
poor.
trying to make a living.
Hard to be poor.
I don't know if I'm expressing this right.
It's perfect.
That Dorn Ashley, I don't know if I'm going to speak to her again or not.
It's taken your whole film.
It's
from
okay.
One thing.
Or do you think that I'm